right, here we go again. We're back with another weekly Sheep Farm podcast, hosted on your favourite bullshit platform with our big shill mics, with our Chris, my brother, two-part breeds from Yorkshire. This is episode 225. The double nostrils, I suppose, Chris.
Good evening. Good afternoon.
The format is simple. We release a minimum of 4 shows a month. Members get the full podcast plus download. Non-members get part 1 plus download. All shows are released on Saturdays and they're always at sheepfarm.co.uk. We also put part 1 on Podomatic. They distribute them out to Spotify, Amazon, Audible and Tapple. You know the score. Please subscribe to the website for email notifications for new shows and join us on Instagram where you can join my lovely sidekick, the man with the never-ending bottle of wine.
I've got tea today, Fatty, actually.
Yeah. Thanks for buying supplements from Elfbunk, and remember, use the promo code. Thanks for buying stuff from his merch store, our Big Shill merch store. That's about it, really. We'll try to get this on YouTube as well for once. Although we got last week's on YouTube on a premiere. It's nice to see the people in the chat. And there's a new Matrix, I think it's number 52 out, video.
What, are you going to stop doing them at 35?
I know, we're going to stop doing them at 20. Somebody actually asked, right, if I can make the clips longer, just to add more time to my day.
Just do it.
Yeah, no. If I did that, I wouldn't do them all because it just take too long.
All right.
Our guest today is someone who's definitely got a big shill mic and grips it within an inch of his life on every single podcast. We're joined today by our mate Mark Devlin. How are you doing, Mark?
Hello, fellas. Yeah, I've repainted this mic because I gripped it right down to the metal. I got a little bit angry in 2020, and I've been using the same mic for the past 30 years.
Didn't notice that anger, Mark. Didn't notice it.
No?
No,
Okay.
You weren't wearing it on your sleeve. No.
I told you this before,
yeah,
Mark.
I mean, I learnt it all from Mark Passio because he's such a calm, well-balanced, genteel individual, you know?
Yeah.
I noticed that before we even got speaking to you, Mark. I said, have you seen how white his knuckles go?
Pretty well.
Gripping it tighter and tighter.
When you mentioned your glamorous assistant there, Dom, my mind went back to Bruce Forsyth and the Generation Game in the 70s where he had these, glamorous women. Yeah. And I could just picture Chris in a flowing blonde wig with a nice frock. You know?
Don't give him any ideas, not in this day and age.
I'm going to say, I'd fit into society quite well, I think. Now, Mark, it wouldn't make any difference. No one would notice.
Well, what'd you get up to down your shed? That's what I want to know.
I think more than a long flowing dress, maybe a long flowing vest, possibly.
Like a onesie vest, yeah.
Yeah, onesie vest, blue eyeliner. Could see that, Chris. Very fetching.
Thanks, guys.
Nice thought.
Yeah, nice thought. We've got a couple of live shows coming up that we're doing. One on 17th of May. Chris has drawn lovely 3 pictures there of these 3 Stooges.
It's made me look about 70.
Yeah, sorry about that, Mate. I look worse than anyone, so that's my excuse.
I know you look like you've just been dragged through an edge backwards. I know. You haven't done yourself any favours there.
I know, because I'm drawing myself. I made myself look insane, don't I?
Yeah, you had to give my lazy eye just a little bit of a laziness there, didn't you?
Your left eye. A slight tink, yeah.
Yeah, just a slight. Although the next picture where John Hamer, he looks like he's just auditioned for New Direction or whatever it is, One Direction.
I don't know why he looks so chiseled. I don't know. I kept trying, but
he looks about 30 years younger than us.
Yeah. He's had his teeth done, everything.
My hairline's more receding than yours, Chris, on that picture.
It's more receding than mine.
Do you want me to touch it up? I didn't mean to offend anyone. Except for John will be over the moon with that.
Just swap hair between me and John Hamer.
He's definitely got some sort of 80s boys' own type hairdo going on there. Yeah. Some sort of soul glow in it.
Girls.
Yeah. That's your God series. You've just released another God part. What is it, 3000 or something?
Something like that, yeah, inspired by yourselves. Yeah, it's interesting because with each new God installment that I drop, I get less hate, which is a good thing, I suppose, because the first one I put out in January 24 offended a lot of Christians, it seems, a lot of pissed off Christians. And with every new volume, I get more and more support and less hassle. So I think I'm getting somewhere with it.
Do you think the Christians at the gates of the castle are getting a bit bored? Throwing stuff at you?
Well, I don't know why they keep coming back for more. It's like you put out a video and people say, oh, this is old information. I know this and you got this wrong and this isn't right. And you just think, well, why are you here then? If you don't like it, jog on to a channel that's more suited towards you. But that started to happen. I think those that were offended or horrified by what I was saying, and there are only questions throughout this series. I've just been asking questions. I'm not claiming to know anything. But the amount of people that are getting upset by that is diminishing. And the amount that are saying, oh, it's great that somebody else is talking about this stuff is increasing.
I'd like to hope that it's people's minds opening a little bit, Matt, and being a little bit less antagonistic. And just, maybe the world's changing and people are getting more willing to listen.
There you go again with your optimism.
Oh, what an asshole.
You horrible person.
I love where Dom says my optimism is like it's like a fault I've got. Like
no, it's a fault. It's brilliant. I
like the way our screens are arranged on this call, because you've got sort of polarity. You've got me, the ultimate nihilist. You've got Chris, the ultimate optimist, and Dom's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, it's true. You're right there.
What's John going to be then?
He'd be over here on left.
Yeah, I think he's quite optimistic these days, isn't he?
Yeah, he's quite optimistic.
He's pretty good, yeah. Revisionist, so we're over on the left, just out the way of everybody. On his own, in his own little camp.
That's where all the rotten eggs and tomatoes get thrown.
Yeah.
Well, but it would be nice to think. It would be nice to think that people's minds are evolving a little bit. Even hardened Christians.
Well, I think they are, to be honest, mate. And I've said many times that when you've been looking at conspiracy or truth research for a certain amount of time, all roads eventually lead to these big questions. All the others just get eclipsed by questions like, what is this realm? What created it? What are we doing here? Nothing can be more important than these questions. And I think a lot of people are arriving at that, because there was a big revolution in people discovering conspiracy stuff in around about 2007, 2008. That's when I started to wake up myself. And so anyone that's been on board for that long, best part of 20 years now, has seen all the stuff about Bilderberg Group and Freemasons and secret societies, Illuminati, all this. And eventually you just get to this stage where you start to question, what is any of this and how does it all fit together? And that's where a lot of people are at now.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of truth in religions, but also it's so old that it has to have been tampered with humans to control humans, and that doesn't mean you have to be even anti whatever. It's just the fact that it'll have been thwarted so that we are more controlled by it. Obviously, it
may have started out with noble intent. I think that was the case with, for example, the Freemasons. I think it was a kind of well-meaning practice when it first emerged, but it obviously got hijacked and the hierarchy and the structure of it got taken over and steered off in nefarious directions. But when it first started out, it probably had, noble intent the way a lot of religions did, but they all get steered off in the end.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of lodges. I was speaking to someone the other day, someone who me and Dom know, and they were on about they do some chefing for a lodge, and I used to do some waitering for lodges in Halifax.
Is that where you wore them chapless bottoms?
And the majority of what they do, I mean, I'm saying this now and it sounds like dodgy. It's charity work, isn't it? But it sounds a bit Jimmy Savile already, doesn't it? So, but I'm sure some of them do good stuff for the communities, with a bit of businessman backroom handshakes. But I don't know, it must depend on the. But it's got hijacked, like you say, Matt. Yeah, I think it has got hijacked.
Who was that guy you had on the other week?
Guy Anderson, wasn't it?
Oh, his name was
Guy Anderson.
Guy Anderson.
Yeah. He was a Freemason. He seemed like a nice guy. I believed his story. It sounded quite genuine to me. What did you make of it, Matt?
What level did he reach? Just remind me.
3.
Very low. Yeah.
One of his main points was that if you go in as a normal person, an average person, you only ever get to level 3. That was one of his main points, that no one ever gets past that who he knew. You only get past that if you've chosen to go past it.
But he discovered a lot even getting to level 3. From what I remember. So it just makes you think, what are the other 30 degrees all about? What do they get to learn? What do they get to know that the others don't?
Yeah. Well, they meet up with I think you were saying they meet up with other groups. So that's probably how you get in. I don't know. I mean,
I would say the different lodges as well, with different hierarchy within the lodges.
Very strangely, I think I mentioned this when we were on about him. I've been haunted by Freemasons. Like I said, when I was a kid, I used to do some outside catering as a waiter for Masons. And then I moved to London and I worked in a hotel on Liverpool Street on the corner. and it had a Masonic lodge upstairs, and it was one of the big ones as well. I don't know how or why I knew that, but I'd be a waiter in this cafe, and all these black suited guys with ties had come in, and then they'd all wander off up this balcony up to this room. And I actually went in it once because I asked if I could go in. There was a guy cleaning. I said, "Can I have a look in?" And he let me in. And it was a classic, massive room. And imagine in the middle of a hotel, just this massive room, marble floor, checkerboard floor. I remember there was a massive zodiac on the roof. There was a throne at one side, and all kinds of paraphernalia. But I was only like 20, and I didn't really know anything about that stuff then. I just found it interesting from a artistic point of view, I suppose.
Did you ask him why I'm wearing these hot pants?
Just another day at the office in Oxford for all that stuff. I tell you.
Yeah. One thing I found with the Jane Asher research is that Margaret Elliott's family actually have, not just Masons, they actually have their own lodge called the Elliott Lodge.
Different level there,
Just a
right?
coincidence. Though.
Oh, yeah, it's another coincidence. Yeah, so they own. They actually, a lot of these people who were surrounding Jane Asher aren't just Masons. They actually have their own lodge, and we'll be doing that presentation on our 17th of May.
But don't worry, Paul met her down the disco and chatted her up, and that's how they met.
Yeah, you've got lovely hair. Thanks. Yeah.
Do you come here often?
Yeah.
That's all it was.
Yeah. So let's get the reason. Well, not just the reason you're here. We're here for a chinwag, but one of the reasons you're here is you've released a new book, and the title is "No One's Dad's a Plumber," which obviously we've had emails and laughs about over the last 18 months with certain things going on. But just for the viewing audience, can you tell them why you're not anti-plumbers, are you?
No, I'm not. I've got nothing against plumbers, and I get a leaky sink from time to time, so I do need a plumber. People look at the title. Some people have looked at it and said, "What load of nonsense, no one's dad's a plumber. My mate Dave down the road, his dad's a plumber." That's not what we're talking about here. I did warn that I was going to put out a book at some stage called No One's Dad's a Plumber, and so I've done it. And it's the fourth in the Musical Truth series. I didn't want to just call it Musical Truth 4. I think No One's Dad's a Plumber is quite a memorable title. It's a conversation starter. And of course, it refers to what we've spoken about on our shows for the past fuck knows how many years. I think it's only 5, but it feels like about 50.
I had air then.
This is this is the dynamic of when you get into the fathers and the families of celebrities, famous people, and in my case specifically musicians. You would be hard pressed to find many plumbers, builders, dockers, lorry drivers, jobs of this nature, ordinary working class crafts. What you do find instead is shitloads of generals, lieutenant colonels, admirals, judges, masons, politicians, diplomats. And for me, that's a bit of a strange thing. When it comes to rock stars, you might expect to find 1 or 2, but you find bloody loads. And you come to realize that this is the norm when it comes to family backgrounds. And eventually your research leads you to the conclusion that the reason these people are famous and the reason they've been inserted into popular culture and everyone's heard of them is purely down to the families that they come out of. So they're inserted into music, TV, films and such. The controllers of these institutions just want their own in place as the culture leaders, those that steer culture in certain desired directions. So this book is homing in further on that dynamic, plenty of new examples. It's really reinforcing the points I made in the previous 3 books, but the information just never stops coming, as you well know. Every morning you log into your inbox and there's another piece of information. So I just thought there's so much here that it deserves to be put into a book. It needs to be preserved for posterity. It needs to go between the 2 covers, so that it's there for anyone that cares to look at it. Because if I don't put it together in this book, there's a danger this information will just fizzle out and no one will ever get to see it. And it's very important that people do see these things.
Well, I actually bought a copy from Amazon.
Oh, nice one.
Because I was going away for a few days over Easter, and I thought I could do with something else to read. And I would say that throughout the series, all the books, they're obviously improving. You can see your writing styles, as it would do, wouldn't it? Like any sort of job that you do, you're going to improve things. And the level of detail in this one, I'd say, is a lot deeper.
I would hope so, yeah. And also, I've hit upon some sort of formatting techniques. Right. So every time I talk about a new artist, I put the name in bold. And so if you're flicking through the pages, an artist's name might catch your eye, David
Yeah.
Bowie or the Rolling Stones, whoever it is. And then you can see that that's a little paragraph that you want to read about that artist. And there's a few other little formatting tricks I've come up with as well. There's some photos in there just to help give the stories a lift,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not sure I'll do another one, to be honest. I don't really want to be writing musical truth books for the rest of my days. I did say that after volume 3.
Famous
Actually.
last words.
Yeah, I know.
Bollocks.
I'm gonna get my copy when I see you in May, Matt. I want a copy. I've got your other ones. Was it quicker to write this time than the other ones?
Yeah, just a bit.
Just from
The
practice.
first book that I did, Musical Truth Volume 1, 5 years worth of research, and it took me just over a year to write it. I think it was 14 months. This one, 2 months.
Wow, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
And
I totally fast tracked it. I started it at the beginning of January and I set myself a deadline of 1st of March because I wanted to launch it on the 22nd, which is the spring equinox. It's 322. It's an important date within occult esoteric research. And I thought, well, I want to get the book out on that date. So, yeah, 2 months, the whole thing from start
we're
to
going to become the Stephen King of music conspiracy books.
That's
Just
what
check.
I fear.
I
Yeah.
mean, is it a major? I know you can write other stuff as well, but is it a major issue if there's musical truth 7 or 8 and 9 and 10 type of thing? If there's the information there, and people want to read them, which I want to read stuff like this, I don't think there's an issue with being tagged as. I know none of us I liked doing different types of research. I understand that part as well, but I think it'd be a shame not to do one every 2 or 3 years type of thing. It might not be a yearly thing.
Yeah, well, that's kind of why I did this book, because I thought nobody else is going to put this information out. I know you guys get into it, but I'm still waiting for your book. When's that coming out?
well, do you know I'm on the 11th chapter now, but you know the level of crap I go into. And so the first 13 or 14 chapters are just about Boris Johnson.
In a few
Is the book
in a-
called The Life and Times of Charlemagne?
Yeah.
In a few years, Don will be changing that every 2 months, Mark. Don't worry.
Do you know what? I've got that much going on, that many plates spinning. I've penciled in a date for me. Do you know the 6th anniversary of the first lockdowns? That's the date I want to release it on.
23rd of March next year.
Yeah, that's the date I'm looking at releasing it on. And I've planned out if I do a chapter a week, which I'm doing that at the moment, I'll finish writing it by December. And then obviously there's all the other crap that you've got to do. There's going to be about 50 chapters. Yeah.
So it's going to make John Hamer's books look like pamphlets.
I think John's going to do read through, so he'll tell me. No, it won't make John Amos look like pamphlets. I think he's still be a bit longer. I think it'll be about 600 or 700 pages, mine.
Wow.
Yeah. But
Well, this one was 354, I think.
yeah. Well, do you know what? Initially, I wanted to do one at 350, 400. And I thought, I'll just do Boris Johnson at 3. Then I thought, I'm missing out all the other criminals who were around at that point as well that we did podcasts on, that have got thousands of words written down that need to be put in a book format.
I've never asked you, have you dug into Matt Hancock?
Well, it was the first podcast we did, wasn't it? Matt Wancock.
I'd like to dig into him with a shovel.
Still raising his
Just
little
wondered if
greasy
you
face.
found any, interesting bloodline stuff with Hancock.
Well, his first wife was married into the aristocracy. She was part of the aristocracy, wasn't she? Her dad was a baron of some nature.
Yeah. I think I think we worked out he just looked like a triad, didn't he? Just wanted
Yeah,
to.
I think there's some people that maybe haven't got the lineage, but they just want to be part of it. And they're
They're the most
That's
dangerous ones.
Tony Hancock's nephew.
yeah. Well, I haven't looked into him yet, but his chapter will come up once I finish Boris's. I've got the layout will be part 1 will be Boris, part 2 in the book will be all the sort of cabinet ministers that were around at that particular point, with a special edition of Tony B. Liar in there. And also then after that, it'll be the Sage Group. So there's 3 parts to it, possibly 4 with the media as well. That's bringing all the work that we did, the research I did in 2020 and the shows me and Chris produced into 4. Why am I talking about my book? We're talking about yours. Into
I know, but this is
parts.
important. This is the point. If you didn't do this book, this information might just fizzle out and go into the ether and nobody
Yeah.
would ever get to know it. And a lot of people have forgotten what we all went through during the COVID years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your
I know.
podcast might not even exist if we hadn't gone through all that shit back in 2020.
Exactly.
So it's very important that people remember what these criminals did to us.
Yes.
People don't talk about Chris Whitty anymore or Patrick Balance. You know, these are names that have just...
Well, he's going to have about 10,000 words in my book.
And it's quite clear what happens as well, isn't it? They bring these in to do X jobs, whatever, and then move them on. So we do forget about them. And then yesterday's news, and the news moves so quick now, that it's all just forgotten about. Possibly the most important thing that's happened in our lifetime.
Yeah.
And, you know, like you said, Chris Whitty's going to vanish.
Valance is
going to vanish. Yeah. They just move them along, don't they, and bring another psycho in to do the next job.
Yeah.
That's right. And people have short memories.
Well, I'll tell you what, while we're doing the last chapter about Dominic Cummings, and that got my blood fucking boiling. I don't know if you remember, but when everyone were locked down, he drove his family up to that castle, Barnard Castle in the northeast, and it just so happened that GlaxoSmithKline's office's main factory production facility are there, and they got a £60 million contract to produce some of the arm spears, and they were telling everybody we're ill, and he couldn't see it affected his eyes and all sorts of stuff.
Well, I was driving around all over the place during COVID.
So right, yeah.
Barnard Castle, all around the country.
Me too.
Me too.
I had
spreaders.
Talking about this, fellas, I can tell you this because I know she'll never listen. I had an interesting conversation yesterday with well, if she does listen, it doesn't matter because she's someone I really like. It's a woman I shared an allotment with around here, and by chance she works for AstraZeneca, and
Weapons that kill.
Yeah, and she knows my opinion. We have quite open discussions. We don't have arguments about it. She's only in correspondence. She's correspondence, so she's not like a scientist or anything. But I was telling her that we were looking for a venue around Cambridgeshire, you know, and we're in the allotment, right over from the allotment. It's quite weird, this actually, is Addenbrooke's. And then they're building all the new AstraZeneca buildings there, which weirdly have been building for the last 10 years since I've been here. And she said, oh, you know, they've got auditoriums over in AstraZeneca. You could do it there. I said, I don't think that's a very good idea. And she's like, why not? And I said, well, you know what we discuss, you know what we talk about. Oh, right, yeah. So we had this conversation. And she wouldn't see, because I was saying, is it not? She goes, but we don't, you know, Zeneca don't really specialise in jabs. And it's mainly cancer research. And I said, well, do you not think it's weird that they came out with a jab and now there's a massive rise in cancers in young people? And she's like, oh yeah, but it's just circumstantial. And she wouldn't see it. We don't argue about these things. It was
just haphazard, Chris. Just look.
Yeah. And I said,
Bad
what about footballers planting themselves face down on a football pitch? Yeah, it could be something else. It could be other factors involved. I said, well, there is one factor that's happened in the last 5 years, and it's these people were forced to get jibby jabbed. Just wouldn't accept it. I'll keep plugging away at her though. She's a lovely woman.
It's her head with a turnip.
Like someone gets eaten by a shark and their body washes up on the shore, and somebody will go, oh, it wasn't a shark, it must have been something else, you know.
Yeah. But I mean, that would be interesting, wouldn't it, if us guys could do a live show in AstraZeneca building.
That is the belly of the beast.
I'm pretty sure it'd get cancelled before we got there.
Well, they're going to have there's going to be a chapter on AstraZeneca as well, their history. So yeah, there's about, like I said, there's about 50 chapters. But like you say, Mark, though, it is easily forgotten, isn't it?
It is. And that's why it's important that we get this information down and preserve it for posterity and keep it offline as well. You know, people make YouTube videos and podcasts and stuff. If the internet ever goes down, it's important this information is there in some other form, in hard copy.
Yeah.
You know, books are going to outlast YouTube videos by generations, potentially.
Yeah. And I have to say, though, when I'm going through it, it does rile me. That certain parts of it, when you're going back through your notes, that do get your blood boiling.
Brings it all back, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Very emotional time. Very emotional time. For all of us, even us that knew it was nonsense.
And I think people just want to move on from it now. This is why people don't really talk about it in polite society. You don't hear conversations in Weatherspoons about what we all went through in 2020, 21. Most people just seem to want to move on, chalk it up as, oh yeah, it's a terrible thing, but you know, it's in the past now. Let's just get on with our lives. Very important that we don't forget what these people did. And there's only a few of us that are still talking about them, you know.
Yeah.
Hancock's probably going to die peacefully in his sleep as a very old man. having not faced the consequences of his actions.
Yeah,
Well,
Every country has got charities set up to look after the jab damaged. That's totally forgotten about. I wish I'd have mentioned that actually. Every country's got these charities to look after these people that don't give mainstream don't give a shout out to at all.
well, it never
And
will.
also,
will
it
they?
becomes quite boring talking about, the bloody arm spears and all those agendas, because guys like us have been immersed in that information for years. So it's a little bit tedious at this stage in the game, but it's still important that we do it because not many are willing to look at all this information and get it out there. So the responsibility seems to fall on the few of us that have been on board with it all along.
Well, one thing that made me angry, a young lad at my son's school, one of his mates, a year ago, his dad was diagnosed, and I had the conversation with him around a rugby pitch about the arm spears going back 3 years ago. You think it were a con then? Because he asked me what I did. He made the fatal mistake. What do you do then? Well, I've got a podcast. What do you talk about? Anyway, blah, blah, blah. He wasn't in on any of this stuff. So do you think it were a con? He said, yeah. He said, I had 4 of them. Right? So he had 2 boosters and 2 taps. And he passed away last week. He's our age.
When was that
He's got
first
a-
conversation, Dom? Because I listened to this whole thing unfold as Don kept saying, I saw him again today and this, and I saw him, and then he's in a wheelchair.
Yeah,
and
it took 9 months for him to get to 3 rounds of chemo. 9 months over the last 9 months. And he passed away last week.
which
Do you
is
think his family joined the dots?
No,
no.
not a chance. No.
Same thing happened to my missus's boss man, 9 months and he was gone, prostate cancer.
And so if that don't make you angry or key you up to do something, the amount of trauma, going back to your God thing series about trauma, the amount of trauma that they've inserted into society through many different ways. I know Chris is an optimist. I'm a pragmatist. You're an. It's irrelevant what we are.
I'm very
If you
capable of
can
getting
think
angry though, fire.
Pardon? Yeah, that's
I'm very
what I mean.
capable of getting angry.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say, though. That we once you see and that door opens and you see that toxic environment that they're allowing us to live in, just to create some kind of reaction, or whether it's that poor guy who's passed away, or anger you see people walking around with. There is no good news anymore that people are saying. And I'm quite a positive guy, but people are witnessing a time where everything's bad news. Whatever they're reading in mainstream is telling them it's shit. Global warming's going to kill you. That's going to kill you. This is going to do you. There's going to be no money for everybody. You're all going to starve. There's no water left. Blah, blah, blah. Even next week, for instance, there's going to be a bit of a couple of days warm. It's a mini heat wave. It's not just a couple of days of warm weather. It's a mini heat wave, which...
AKA an afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I've just done a podcast with Matt Landman, actually, which I'm
Fantastic,
going to release later today.
He's a great guy, Matt, isn't he?
Amazing activist.
Yeah.
And he was talking about, actually, the day that we'd scheduled the chat for was the day where the mainstream officially announced that the UK government is sanctioning blocking out the sun. So they're now admitting to what they've been doing for 30 odd years anyway. And now that they're admitting to it, the mainstream public is going to go, oh, right, okay, that's what those planes are in the sky then, when we've been bashing our heads against brick walls trying to tell people for decades. So that show with Matt will be coming out soon. And he's organised this event in London for the summer solstice with beautiful poetic relevance there on the 21st of June in Hyde Park. So very important that many, many people turn up to that and just give a very clear visual message that we're not having this. We're not standing for this.
And who's behind a lot of it again? Our old mate, Bitch Tits Gates.
Yeah.
Throwing his billions and trillions and whatever else he wants to do at it.
Yeah, but don't worry, lads, because we're all going to get an apology. Because everyone will calling us crazy. So everyone who you've told about chemtrails is going to go, sorry, guys, you were right.
Yeah.
Or maybe not. Maybe I'm being over
Can't
optimistic
see that
there.
happening, Chris.
I'm definitely being over optimistic there. Aren't I?
Yeah, but officially, no chemtrailing took place before the 23rd of April 2025. It's only after. So we were nutters for claiming it was happening before, but now it really is.
They were just laying the groundwork then. I suppose it's got so blatant now that they can't deny it. So they've had to announce
I think that's what it
officially.
is. Even normies are noticing, why is the sky so full of all this white, milky, cloudy crap? And why does it always rain the next day? So they've had to come out and admit
It's-
what they're doing.
It is strange. I was on the allotment yesterday, and it's an open field space. 1 minute it's freezing, sun comes out and it gets red hot. I was literally in an overshirt and a tracksuit top and a vest. And sometimes I wanted to be down to the vest. Sometimes I wanted my shirt and my tracksuit top. It was that the difference was that, you know what I mean, from really hot to
Maybe
freezing.
a nice frock, Chris.
Thermal frock.
Yeah.
But it went from vest to woolly jumper in no time. But I don't remember that happening like that. Not where, you'd have a certain temperature up to a certain time, then it'd change, and then you'd have to put whatever on. But it just flashed from minutes to minutes, from cold to boiling. Very odd.
I forgot to ask Matt why the sun is white these days. I'd really love to know.
Yeah.
It weren't white in the 80s anyway.
No.
Or the
Why
90s.
can I see the moon up there every day? Well, not every day.
And more or less every day.
Yeah, in the
I
daytime.
can't remember that. When I was a kid, I can't remember seeing the moon all the time in the sky while it were light.
No.
I think we're back to questioning the true nature of this reality again. What is this realm? How is
Yeah.
it constructed?
Yeah. Constructed probably being the right word. Well, because we're
You know,
walking
I
around.
think it's like computer code. It's coded.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
well,
it's,
we've been
it's
talking about
actually
that.
like
yeah.
an AI simulation matrix type
Yeah.
scenario.
But also, I mean, when you're walking around and you're talking to people, how many people do you meet, like, say, us three, where you can have a conversation about this stuff? At my son's football, I actually met one guy who is into the stuff we're into. But you can't, me and him didn't talk for about 18 months. And then for some reason we talked about all this stuff. So how many people are there? So it's like you're walking around in the Matrix with Neo being shown that all these people are basically your enemy in a parallel universe.
Literally NPCs.
Literally, NPCs who are quite happy to go along with it, along with everything, and then moan about how life's shit when it's they're actually doing it to themselves.
Yep.
Like some kind of mass self-harming orchestrated event.
I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. The government comes out and says, we are going to block out the sun.
Can you get more satanic than that?
Right.
No.
The life-giving properties of the sun. Life does not thrive and survive without sunlight.
No.
We do not thrive and survive without vitamin D. So they're saying we're going to create a blanket to prevent sunlight from getting through. There should have been a mass revolution of people rising up saying, we're not having this. Out, 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 dragging them out
Yeah.
into the street.
Never mind, queer star and I'll sort it all out.
No.
Was there
Everyone's
any
just-
warning of that that blanket media statement that was going to happen, or did it just happen? It just kind of came out of nowhere all of a sudden. That
Well,
they were-
it seemed to, because it's just coincidence, or was it, that me and Matt Landman were going to talk on that day, and we both saw the headline, and it was a great framework within which to place the podcast.
Yeah.
So I just wonder what's prompted them to show their hand and admit to it at this time. I did note that they announced it on St. George's Day. I mean, St. George's Day means nothing anymore in England, but St. George was the patron saint of England, so it's supposed to mean something. There's no national pride like there is in Ireland for St. Patrick, but they chose to announce it on the 23rd of April. So was that symbolic? Because these dates are never by accident. They're always with some occult significance. Was this mockery? They're saying we've declared war on England on this day, and we know you're going to do nothing about it.
I would say, yeah. I mean, that date means the fact that St. George's Day used to be something. It definitely means something to the controllers, shall we say?
Right. And if you remember, during the COVID times of 2020, all the major announcements came out on significant dates. So on the 15th of June, the anniversary of the Magna Carta being signed, which is all about freedom, the British Constitution, they announced that you're going to have to wear masks on public transport. And then in the autumn, Johnson popped up on TV on a Saturday evening. Why Saturday?
Yeah.
Because it was Halloween.
Yeah.
No, because it was
Literally
dangerous coin, whatever.
But they never do anything
Going
on a
around the
they
world.
never do anything on a weekend. So it was odd. That it
And then
came out
he says, oh dear, the COVID threat level is severe again, so we're going to have to lock everything down. Starting Thursday.
Yeah.
Why? Because Thursday was bonfire night. So all these dates are loaded with significance, particularly when it comes to England and patriotic pride, if there is any. they're picking these dates deliberately
There's
to
plenty of
roll out
pride.
their tyranny.
Plenty of pride, Mark.
Well, there's plenty of that, yeah.
Plenty of pride. Generally rainbows. I notice a lot of the genealogy of a lot of these people as well actually go back to the signers of the Magna Carta. So when you're doing the research on them, and we'll talk about a few in a bit, but you tend to see that a lot of them are the signers of the, or were around their family members were signers of the Magna Carta. Then they're coming out with what you've just said there, lockdowns and changes in society on the days that their actual family members in the years past would have been signing that document.
Exactly. And
Just
how
look.
many times do you find celebrities or famous people who have that kind of ancestry? I know in your research, this bugger Charlemagne keeps popping up. Everyone seems to have been sired by him at some point. And what I'm finding in my research is so many ancestors of famous people are said to have been on the Mayflower. They sailed
Yes.
on the Mayflower.
Yeah.
That must have been a bloody big boat because there were lots of people that were on the Mayflower.
Like a
And
P&O
also,
ferry.
yeah, my research keeps going back to the Sex Pistols' fabled concert, this mythical show they did at Manchester Lesser Free Trade Hall in 1976. And so many bands like Joy Division, Buzzcocks, The Fall say that they were in attendance at that gig, and that's what inspired them to start a band. Must have been a bloody big venue then, because so many bands say this.
Yeah.
Apparently, there are only like 20 or 30 people there, but so many are saying, oh, yeah, I was there that night. It changed my life.
So they've turned it into this legendary event that was probably just a wet
Yeah.
fart. Yeah.
Because they always have to explain where people come from, and there's always the Cinderella fairy story attached. To
A bit like the
why-
story about Peel in your book, John Peel.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Don't want to spoil it for anybody, but that's an interesting story in itself, isn't it? That it was
Well, we
in
could
the-
talk a bit about
Yeah,
John
yeah,
Peel
yeah,
if you want.
yeah,
Because,
yeah, too right.
you
Yeah,
know, most people don't, and when they research the music industry, they focus on singers and bands and sometimes producers, but very rarely DJs, apart from Savile. So John Peel was always marketed as this champion of independent underground music, and he was always put across as somebody that was different to the smashy and nicey, cheesy sort of Radio 1 DJs. And his name never really came up in all the Jimmy Savile stuff when people were talking about Jonathan King and Chris Denning and all these other BBC pedos. But there are some dodgy things about him. He married his wife when she was 15. He admitted in interviews that when he worked on radio stations in Dallas, Texas, before he came back to England to become a part of Radio 1's first lineup, he said young girls, some as young as 13, used to queue up outside the radio studio. And he said they just wanted me to abuse them sexually, which of course I was only too happy to do. He admitted that in his own words. And then we've got this really bizarre story about how John Peel, his real name is John Robert Parker Ravenscroft. So he came from a quite wealthy family on the Wirral. He wasn't working class. He worked on his voice to sound like a man of the people, you know. But when you listen to early recordings of him, he's got this plummy public school sort of accent, and he tried to shake that off so that he would be accepted as a champion of the people. And he just happened to be present in the wake of the JFK assassination when they were parading Lee Harvey Oswald in a press conference with Jack Ruby, who's said to have shot Oswald, also in attendance. And Peel says that he blagged his way in. He says that him and his mate Bob went up to this police cordon and they said, oh, we work for the Liverpool Echo in England. I'm a reporter and he's a photographer, despite having no ID, and Bob, who was supposedly a photographer, having no camera. And we're asked to believe that the police said, in you go, lads, no problem, after the president has just been shot. So then my mind goes to his adopted name. After John Ravenscroft, he became John Peel. And who was John Peel? He was the founder of the English police force. So is the name a clue? Did Ravenscroft have some kind of intel links, some sort of military connections? And could that be why he was able to get into that Oswald press conference? Could that be why he was selected to be on the BBC for so long? He was the longest serving Radio 1 DJ up until his death in 2004. And the BBC, as we know, is an arm of the British government, British military intelligence, in bed with Tavistock and everything else. So suddenly he becomes just a little bit more than a working class DJ playing independent bands late at night on Radio 1.
Yeah. It is amazing when you start looking at some of these people and the backgrounds that it isn't, you don't even have to scratch that far. It's not even, some of it's not even that hard work to do. It's just a matter you've got to do it, isn't it?
It's all out there in the public domain.
Yeah.
And I was greatly influenced, as people know, by Dave McGowan and his book Weird Seasons Inside the Canyon. And it was an amazing book. It was groundbreaking, and it set me off on a particular path of research, which I've been doing ever since. But when you get down to it, all McGowan was actually doing was taking information that was already in the public domain. He didn't have to go to libraries and search out obscure material. It was all there online. It was in newspaper articles, obituaries, official biographies, and it was just a case of pulling it all together and watching the patterns form. And they do.
And they do form. Yeah,
I would say everything was nut jobs discussed is out in the public domain. Literally everything. There's nothing needs really finding, does it?
Well, listen to this for a weird story. In some of the sort of like Asher genealogy, there was a name called Mather, and I thought, oh, that's Marshall Mathers. I wonder if she's related. And guess what? Anyway, Marshall Mather was Marshall Mathers, but his actual name was Mather, and they changed it in the 1700s. But one of his relations passed the law for the burning of witches in Salem. And
that's another link you keep getting. You know, roads leading back to Salem, Massachusetts.
Yes.
It just keeps coming up in this research.
Yeah. And then John Dinsmore of the Doors, he had an aunt, well, it would have been a great grandma burnt at the stake in Salem by one of Eminem's fucking great granddads.
Did you discover a link between Marshall Mathers and Samuel McGregor Liddell Mathers, who was one of the founders of the Order of the Golden Dawn, alongside Aleister Crowley?
Well, I haven't. No. I'm saying no. I'm going to have to go back through the notes now because you've just obviously headed me off in a total different direction. You need to. What were they called?
Samuel McGregor Liddell Mathers. You know, it's just the Mathers name comes up again there. And I'd actually be quite surprised if there's not some kind of link between them.
So would I.
Yeah. At this stage.
What you do get, I mean, people do ask me, oh, can you show me how to do this? And you can't, I mean, you get a feeling, don't you, sometimes, within the...
Well, you just give it to Lorraine.
Yeah, if I can't find it, give it Lorraine. Yeah. she's definitely has got a good nose for grabbing stuff as well. But it is one of those ones where you see the pattern, you mentioned the pattern, you see a pattern, don't you? And you go with the pattern. It doesn't always turn into like gold information, but 90% of the time it just seems to materialize in front of you like it's meant to happen.
Yeah.
Is there anything to do with that? Is there anything to do with that Ravenscroft name fact? Because you've mentioned that to me. Because
I'll tell you the Ravenscroft.
That's Viking name, isn't it?
Well, ravens are coming up quite a lot, and especially in a lot of the Doors research, because Jim Morrison's genealogy goes back to ancient Swedish and Danish Vikings, and so does Eminem's as well. And a lot of them had ravens on their shields. In fact, I actually put that in this. Is it on there? No, it's not on one of these. But they actually have ravens in their field and lizards, and he was the Lizard King. And that's an ancient picture of a lizard, within there. And you can see all the snakes and stuff like that. And he emanated from the ancient Viking kings.
How many of us have coats of arms?
No. When I was a kid, I was looking to have a coat.
There was a designer. Who was the designer who he brought a load of stuff out in the 80s that said Lizard King on it as well? Famous, I can't remember his name. But yeah, he had it on the back of jackets and stuff. Obviously coming from Jim Morrison. But again, who was that designer? I can't remember his name now.
I mean, all of these people, I mean, they come from, like, John Dinsmore. John Dinsmore, an obscure member of the Doors, his genealogy, we're absolutely insane. All the ancient kings of Wessex and people like that. I mean, these are ancient Anglo-Saxon kings that go back to Germany, Old Saxony and what have you.
It's the whole of the Doors, isn't it? It's not just Jim Morrison.
No, it's not just him.
It's all the members.
Yes.
This wasn't a random thing, this group coming together, because all of them have military connections and ancestral connections.
Yes. And also, Dawes, an ancient member of his family, we covered this in the Dawes Deception a couple of years ago. He was related to the David, not related, but their ancient family members were friends or fought with David Crosby's ancient family members from Crosby, Stills and Nash.
And then they all end up in Laurel Canyon.
Yeah, just by chance. Oh, that's the one there with the ravens on. That's his shield. It's a big, it's a major Viking thing. They've got their own coins and everything. Who he's related to?
It's like an eyes wide shut mask.
Yeah. And that's one of his great granddads, that guy with the sword, that picture. It's mental. That's all I can say.
Just to retract back a bit, Matt, who was John Peel famous for discovering it? Because I don't really know much about him. But even I'm aware that he was the guy who discovered everybody. But
yeah, well, he started on Radio 1 in 1967, right at the end of the first Summer of Love. So Radio 1 launched in September 67. And Peel did a show first off called The Perfumed Garden. And he was pushing hippie stuff, hippie acts and real bohemian stuff. He did stuff with Mark Bolan when he was Tyrannosaurus Rex before he became T-Rex and went electric when they were still doing acoustic instruments. And he used to appear at festivals with Mark Bolan, actually. And then later in the 70s, he popped up in the video to Rod Stewart's Maggie May, miming playing the mandolin. And towards the end of the 70s, he is said to have championed punk and post-punk and new wave, and he got behind that whole scene. So it seems there were certain agendas that they wanted to push at certain times. So in the 60s, it was the hippie stuff. In the 70s, it had been decided that punk was going to replace progressive rock, and it was going to kick the music industry up the arse. So they needed their flag bearers to, their Pied Pipers, to get those scenes up and running, and Peel fitted the bill. There are many when it comes to DJs. This is why I think it's so interesting to look at DJs. And I've got a big section in this book called The Gatekeepers, where I focus on Pete Tong, Carl Cox, Fatboy Slim, Paul Oakenfold, and Judge Jules, because all of them have been involved in pushing certain styles of music, mainly electronic dance music. But they're all in my book Pied Pipers. It was never left to chance that they were going to become the leaders of those scenes. They were inserted, or they were directed to do everything that they did, because the system just needs their own in place to lead any kind of culture or fad or trend or movement that they want to get out there. And so Peel ticked the boxes, and Tong and Oakenfold and all this lot ticked the boxes.
Yeah, I mean, I've got mixed mind whether all of them know what's going on or they're being used, because obviously think operations like Mockingbird, for argument's sake, most of the people didn't even know they were being used. And I'm not sticking up for anybody. I don't really care if they know. They're still doing the bidding of the system, the state, if you like.
To me, from what Mark said, Peel sounds like an agent.
Oh, Peel does. Peel sounds like a definite agent.
He was boosted all along, wasn't he? And then put into the position of being known. Like I said, I knew this, but I don't know anything about him. The guy who discovers new bands. Yeah.
Yeah, and you get all these sort of middle to upper class, public school educated, posh white boys. And they're the ones that are always put out there as leaders of scenes.
I told you to watch them white fuckers, Chris. Sorry, Mike.
So Peel's championing all these underground obscure acts and stuff, and then Tim Westwood. Oh God, probably talking. He was inserted into the hip hop scene in the UK to become its gatekeeper and steer it off in certain directions. Then you've got David Rodigan when it comes to reggae, and Norman Cook, Fatboy Slim when it comes to electronic dance music. He's a posh boy. Went to Reigate School, as you well know, alongside So Queer Stalin.
Yeah.
Doing violin lessons together. And I've got a quote in the book from Fatboy Slim, Norman Cook, and he's talking about his time at Reigate alongside Queer Stalin. And he said, it could all have turned out so differently. He said, Stalin could have become the musician or the DJ, and I could have become the politician. And it just makes you think, these people are obviously tapped for some sort of prominent future career. But I think early on, it's not necessarily known what they're going to be doing. So it's only later down the line it's decided, okay, we've got it now. Norman Cook's going to become an influential DJ. That's going to be his role. It seems that way.
And two of the and there's pictures of Starmer as a musician when he were at college. There's pictures of Blair as a musician when he were at college. So they were just like, they could have gone in any direction. He could be Starmer could be reading news.
It's a horrifying thought.
Yes.
Can you imagine Starmer up at a rave with his hands in the air playing all this music and
No.
with a Smiley t-shirt?
No.
But you're right though, Matt. The character who should be pushing the next agenda, if you like, he never matches what the agenda is, does he? He's just like he didn't look right in that
Well,
situation.
if everything was organic and natural and just left to flourish on its own, do you not think the most prominent DJ within the hip hop scene in the UK would have been black?
Definitely.
The most prominent DJ in the reggae scene would have been black.
Yeah,
Why are
with
posh
dreadlocks.
white boys popping up here?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's strange, isn't it?
You see Fatboy Slim's new Skull and Crossbones Smiley merch
Nice,
on his website.
classy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Was it released on the 22nd of March? 322.
You never know. Yeah, but yeah, it's intriguing. I was mentioning before we came on about a video popped up, Chris, about Terence Trent D'Arby.
All right.
And he said on the video, he's changed his name to Sananda Maitreya, something like that, Maitreya, something like that. The record label was angry because I wouldn't conform to the soul boy image. Like he's the next voice, he's the next soul guy, and he said, "Fuck that, I'm not going to do that." Yeah,
Did always wonder what happened to him because his first album was brilliant.
amazing. Yeah, I did not want to be a black artist. They're very specific about their black artists in the US and what is required of them. It means I didn't get to be what I want to be.
Right.
Yeah, and anyway, he goes on to say basically they said to him, "We own your name." So Terence Trent D'Arby, you'll never own your name ever again. They told him that.
Prince style. Yeah.
Prince style, yeah. It didn't end well for Prince, Michael Jackson, or George Michael when they tried severing those ties with Sony.
Yeah, you did have to wonder about Terence Trent because he's proper talent, wasn't he? Real talent.
Yeah, it would next James Brown, in my opinion.
He vanished into.
He only had one album.
Yeah, one massive
It's the
selling
same thing
album.
as it's the same thing as Lauryn Hill, who was another artist signed to Sony. She had a great album, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill in '98, but that was it. And she got outspoken. She tried to extricate herself from a contract with Sony, and it didn't end well for her either. I mean, she's still breathing, which is something. That's a bonus when you've worked for Sony. But
She was like-
they came after her. They hit her with a tax bill, $2.3 million.
And it was all in the news that she was a racist as well. I remember.
Yeah, and at the time I was still a normie back then, in a normie state of mind, and I fell for that, and I was like, "Oh, this is terrible, what she's saying." But I can see now that it was just a way to discredit her.
Yeah.
It's like what they did to Michael Jackson. They brought those cases against him. I personally think that they were concocted. People would differ with me all day long, but I think they were designed as warning shots to Jackson to start playing ball and shut up, or here's a reminder of what we can do to you.
I saw Laurel Hill in Manchester live, actually. Very good live as well.
Yeah, she was, yeah.
These are probably real talents. That's why, and they can't control. They struggle to control real talent. Hence why now they've got people who have got no talent.
Look how easy it was to get rid of Lauryn Hill. She was just gone, wasn't she? Like almost overnight, Mark. She was gone.
Yeah, she was.
Labeled as a racist.
She was big news in the 90s, and then she
Yeah,
just
she was
fizzled
massive.
out.
Yeah. So have you seen that video going around with? I can't play it on here because we had a few technical issues. But I'll try and splice some of these. I'll do a video later and try and splice a lot of this stuff in that we're seeing. We'll release it as a podcast as we're doing it now. But
In your darkened basement,
yes, yeah,
With stalagmites and dripping.
yeah.
get chained up in the back.
We were saying that other day, weren't we? Ariana Grande saying about when she was releasing a short film called Brighter Days Ahead. It was about the Brighter Days Inc., which featured the clinic that offers memory restoration and erasure services, which Grande's character, Peaches, interesting name, undergoes as an elderly woman. She basically has her mind wiped to forget about somebody she loved when she was younger, and erased all her memories. And she's interviewed saying she had her memories erased and stuff like this. But the odd thing is, there is actually a real Brighter Days clinic. It actually exists that actually helps you with wiping bad memories.
Which is like the
On
film.
one level, it's MK Ultra, and on another, it seems like a metaphor for these lives. Going back to the God stuff, we hear about the memory wipe that we supposedly undergo before we incarnate here, if we have many lives. But this is a constant trope within that research, the memory wipe on a soul level. So. It's interesting because a lot of people are talking about that stuff now, and right when we all are, we get this really strange Ariana Grande story, which seems to tie into it all.
Yeah, I started watching just a normal documentary on YouTube about Ariana Grande because after Dom showed us that video of talking about having a mind, you're like, who talks about having the mind wiped? It's like that film Spotless Mind, isn't it, with Jim Carrey in it? That's what it sounded like to me, but that's supposed to be fiction. But then when she was talking, I actually felt really sorry for her. When she's talking to that interviewer and she's saying, I'll find out what they took away. And she's like, what? What are you talking about? But I watched a little normal video on YouTube, and it was about this guy who promoted her at the beginning. I don't know if you probably know more about this, Matt, but he seemed like a handler to me.
Yeah, there'll definitely be handlers there.
It was quite sad. I thought it was quite sad that
I do feel sorry for a lot of these artists because you can look at them like Nicki Minaj or Cardi B, somebody like that, and you think, oh, they're corrupting the minds and the souls of young people. What they talk about is disgusting, and what they push. But they're obviously being instructed to do it, and they have no choice in the matter. They're owned commodities. They're terrible lives. Nobody would want their lives. Young people look at the likes of them and they think, oh, I would love to be rich and famous and successful like them. No, you wouldn't. If you saw what goes on behind the scenes, nobody would choose that.
Did I send you that? Did you see that video, Marco Stanley, the Marvel guy?
Yeah.
I mean that's
being forced to work till he drops.
Yeah, that was like one of the most, I don't know, evident pieces of thing that we talk about that I've ever seen on video. When that guy, he said, "You really got your money's worth out of me, didn't you guys?" And he goes, "Yeah, every single penny." And that guy stood over him, kind of threatening, almost. God, it shook me to the bloody bone. That did. It
reminds me of that story you've told about Stevie Wonder, where he's kind of flagging and flopping at a concert, and it's like somebody plugs an electrode into him, comes alive again.
Honestly, it was as if someone walked up, stuck something in his neck, then walked off. Then all of a sudden, he was. Even in the crowd, people were saying, "What's going on?" And they had a DJ. Stevie Wonder's on the stage, and he was in Hyde Park, and they had a DJ there, and people were going, "Wonder why there's a DJ there? That's strange." But it was when he flagged, the DJ started, and then everyone started going, "What's going on?" I mean, like I know it's awful, but we just want to see him all sing all the big hits, don't we? You want to see. And then he was just sat there, and I saw him on the screen, and he was just like head bowed, and you felt sorry for him, and then all of a sudden, he was just full of energy. It's like, that was really weird. That was really weird.
Have you seen the Elvis movie by Baz Luhrmann with
No.
Tom Hanks in? Yeah, well, there's a scene there where Tom Hanks plays Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager / handler. And it's towards the end of Elvis's days. He's all fat and bloated and, drugged up to the eyeballs. And he collapses in the corridor before he's due to go on stage. And Hanks's character, Colonel Tom Parker, says, the only thing that matters is that man gets on that stage tonight. And he's got this doctor, Dr. Nick, and he's got this briefcase full of medication, and he just jabs Elvis and fills him full of pills or whatever, just to perk him up enough to get him through the concert. And I'm sure that sort of thing happens all the time in entertainment.
We can go back to Prince, can't we? Because Prince were getting jabbed up with painkillers and stuff like that, and Michael Jackson as well. Similar sort of thing, really, isn't it?
I'm surprised they put that in that film, Mark. Is it worth watching, that Elvis film?
It is. It's done in a very strange style because it's Baz Luhrmann, and he's got this, unconventional directorial style, but it tells a good story. So I'd say it definitely pays dividends.
The fact that it shows that bit you just explained makes me feel like I need to watch it.
Yeah, for research purposes.
Yeah.
I mean that just sums it up, doesn't it? The properties of the record studio. That is it. They're just an entity.
I remember seeing in the heady days of YouTube, I remember seeing a video of Michael Jackson falling on the floor and his feet still going.
Still dancing.
Yeah,
Toy.
yeah. I've seen there's that one of Katy Perry when she just collapses and the two guys come out, pick her up, and just carries on. I
And
don't
then
know
shove
if
her
I've,
off to space.
yeah,
Katy Perry in space. Oh my days! What
yeah.
is going on?
At least I've got a sense of humour.
Did you
Someone.
see that? She had a butterfly, didn't she? She was wearing
Yep.
a monarch
Monarch
butterfly.
butterfly.
In front of her eye. Yeah. I think those things they've got to be aimed at us, just so we waste this time
They're
talking about
mocking
them.
us, aren't they?
Yeah,
They're taking the piss.
yeah. I think it's to take people's time up as well because every platform was discussing that while all this other shenanigans is going on at the same time. You know.
Yes, diversion tactics
Mm.
in many cases.
Yeah, yeah. You got Taylor Swift in there as well in your new book. Who's
There she is.
there he is. Timmy Swift. Going back to your Mayflower guy, she's obviously related to the Mayflower. One of the people that sailed on the Mayflower, is it Richard Swift? Anyway, one of the two, one of the guys who was on
Charlemagne,
there.
there he is.
Yeah, she's got our old friend Charlemagne, or as we say in Yorkshire,
You
Charlemagne.
put
yeah.
Charlemagne.
Yeah.
Charlemagne.
Yeah, Charlemagne. Yeah, I always get grief for
Charlemagne.
calling him wrong name, so I always spell it like that. But her boyfriend was paid 20 million by the Michelle Pfizer company in 2021 for pushing the spear.
I mean, I know I've said this before, but I might be wrong, but do you think she's a geezer? Because I get very, I think she's a bloke, if I'm honest. Taylor Swift.
I don't know. You get these people that claim that every single celebrity and public figure is the
Yeah.
opposite gender of what they're presented as, and I can't go for that.
I'm not saying that. No, I'm not saying that. But her in
No, I know you're
particular-
not.
Her in particular.
I know you're not. You have to look at each case in isolation, I think. So is
She's
Taylor
about
Swift
6'2".
I mean, anything's possible. Lady Gaga could well be Lad Gaga.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a few that.
There's a lot of evidence with Lad Gaga.
It's when I see
we might
footage
look at
of Taylor Swift, though, she just has a male aura. She gives off a geezer appearance. And I kept saying it to my missus, and then there was one clip we saw, and I said, look at this, Lou. And she went, oh my God. It was like, I don't know, it's very hard to explain.
Well, my wife watched that film that she did, whatever that film was on Netflix. I didn't watch it, but she said she looks like a bloke. She actually said the same thing to me.
Did she? Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's an instinct. It's not like I've got any.
How she moves.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And then when you look at her
You know
next to
what
another woman,
horrifies-
she's massive.
What horrifies me, though, and just chills me to the bone, is the thought of how many apparently female pop stars I used to lust over in my schoolboy days in 1980s who may have been geezers. It's an absolutely hideous thought. I mean, one of the ones I used to like was Samantha Fox.
Yeah.
And Samantha Fox can't be a geezer. I mean, how do you fake that?
Yeah, you'd have made him a
Yeah,
bit,
you
you
can't
made him a
fake
bit
that.
sactually had a bit of a hassle.
We
They
actually had a pet fox on the farm. My dad, somebody brought a load of cubs had been killed, and there were one alive, and they brought it and gave it to my dad. Said, "Can you bring this up and try and save it?" And we called it Sam Fox.
Yeah,
That were in the 80s.
I brought it up. It was me that looked after it.
Yeah. Sam Fox.
But I think sometimes as well though, you know, like people who are lauded up as sex symbols. Take Madonna for instance, right? She's lauded.
Do we have to?
But she's been lauded as a sex symbol since the 80s. I don't know any bloke that says I've always fancied Madonna. Even in the 80s, you know, I don't know anyone who went, oh yeah, Madonna's fit. And she even tried to oversex herself with. I'm not saying she's a guy, by the way. I'm just saying, no, I don't know anyone who fancied her. And there's certain these people who are plugged up there as and on the surface they look like really attractive women. But I don't know anyone who goes, oh yeah, they're really nice. You know what I mean? There's certain ones that I think there's an instinct that blokes just don't appeal to them.
Firstly, she's terrifying.
Well, she's now definitely. Yeah.
They just instruct you in how to think, though, don't they? Because if we go back to Jimmy Savile, I mean, take Jimmy Savile, please. Take Jimmy Savile.
To hell.
He was lauded as a national treasure. He was this great broadcaster. I never met anyone when I was a kid that said, "Oh, I really like Jimmy Savile. I watch Jim will fix it every week. He's great." Nobody liked him.
No.
It was forced on us.
You just accepted he was on TV, and the Jimmy Savile, the Jim will fix it show is actually quite a good concept, really. I wrote my letter. I wanted to be Spider-Man for a day, but it won't because of him.
He'd like you in that outfit.
Won't because of him. But again, Taylor Swift. Do you know anyone who says, "Oh, Taylor Swift"? I've always fancied Taylor Swift. She's lovely.
No.
I don't know anybody who talks.
Yeah, not our age group, though, Chris.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's girls that like him. That's weird, isn't it? Why do all girls like him?
Yeah. But Jimmy Savile,
You know,
going back to
something
Jim. Sorry, go on, Mark.
Yeah, sorry. Something my daughter said to me the other day was she was playing me a video of these Gen Zers, so young people of these times, and they were talking about influential figures in music. And this one girl was talking about Taylor Swift, and she said, "Oh, she's brilliant. She's influenced a generation." And then somebody mentioned the Beatles. What about the Beatles? And she said, "Oh, I don't think the Beatles were that influential. The Beatles are nowhere near as influential as Taylor Swift." That's an insight into how Gen Z thinks.
Yeah.
The Beatles, the most famous pop group of all time, have been relegated to four completely insignificant individuals who had no cultural impact at all.
Yeah, and they're not even looking back at history of any music, just what's here right this second and relevant. I always like to retract and look back at music, at all the stuff.
Yeah, because the current stuff is all shite.
Yeah, it is. It's shite. But around here, Mark, there's there used to be a baron called Lord Savile round here in our area, Halifax. It was Lord Savile of Halifax. I think that was his barony round here. And he owned a big landowner, used to be. And it always got me that Jimmy Savile always called his mother the Duchess. So the rumour is that he was related to this aristocratic family, and they were an aristocratic family as well, that ended up marrying
Hailed from West Yorkshire, didn't he?
Yes, that ended up marrying into the Lumley family down at the south coast. So they sold all the land around here. And the last baron moved down to the south coast, married into the Lumley family.
As in Joanna.
I think so. Yeah. I've tried. I mean, she was from a military background. I think she was born in India or somewhere like that. Her father was a colonel or something, or a general in British
Plumber,
Army.
was he?
No, never put any bathrooms in. One of the interesting families I always like looking at are the Copelands. I know you mentioned them because I think you mentioned them in your first book, didn't you? And you bring them up with some other information in this book. And it set me off on looking at their bloodlines, and their bloodlines are absolutely off the scale, surprisingly. Yeah,
There were loads of axes in my class at school.
Yeah.
So common.
John Axe Smith. Yeah. So I traced his family back to 165 BC. His ancestral line.
Bloody hell.
I mean, that's ancient. That is proper ancient, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I found his mother. His mother were also in the intelligence. She worked behind enemy lines in World War II. Then she became an archaeologist after World War II.
And then his sons all go to work in the music industry.
Yeah. I find that story very, very interesting. I suppose that'll be one of the books. But Chris you mentioned this guy, didn't you, Chris?
Kenneth Copeland, yeah. It's one of my weird things I watched about these evangelical preachers in America. And he's the daddy of them. And he literally looks demonic to me, Kenneth Copeland. But if you watch him talking, have you ever watched these guys, Mark? These American evangelistic preachers?
Yeah, I've seen a few of them.
Yeah, there's like
Billy Graham and who was that one? Maurice Cirillo or something like that.
There's like a new batch of them around now, and they basically just go on the stage and talk about themselves and how rich they are, which is weird because they don't really mention anything to do with religion, so they're not really religious per se, but they just talk about how the money and they talk about themselves basically. It's really selfish, but there's thousands of people in the crowd, and the theory is if you don't, they call it tithing. If you give, because I always wondered about this, if you give money to them, then it's going to come back to you. So the more you give to them, the more chance you're going to get back.
Tithing is like planting seeds, isn't it?
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They say tithing.
Yeah.
But they sell that as part of their. It's just, I find it bizarre. This guy's got his own airfield and his own aeroplanes. Got like four Lear jets.
Yeah.
And these people are tipping up money to him. And some of them, the last. But yeah, it's insane.
He said he don't want to go on commercial airlines and being on a plane with a bunch of demons.
Someone there's a famous clip where some journalist pulls him up about it, and he said, "I never said." And he's seen his eyes turn when he says it. Fine.
Yeah.
He says, "I never said that." He like literally turns into a demon. I never said that. Don't you say I said that?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just
It'd
find
be
it
interesting to know if he's part of there. I know he goes back to Germany, and the Copelands go back to Germany as well.
right.
So-
Well, that's why I mentioned it to you, Don. Because I thought I wonder if he's up to
So that'd be an interesting one if I can find a tie-in with them guys. But I would have thought it was. They changed the name. They're not actually called Copeland. I forget the name of the who they actually are.
They might as well lose the E in the middle and just become
Yeah,
Copland.
there's a German-sounding name, Copland. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I never even noticed that.
I prefer Pastor Bob Joyce when it comes to preachers.
Which one's that, Matt? Who's Bob Joyce?
Bob Joyce is the one who supposedly is Elvis.
Ah, right. Yeah, I've heard that story. Yeah, I've heard that story. Did the ages match up?
No, there's a bit of a problem with the ages because Bob Joyce is presented as being in his early 70s, whereas Elvis would now be 90. And there's a bit of a height differential as well. Elvis was quite tall. Bob Joyce seems to be a bit shorter. But bloody hell, when you watch the videos of Pastor Bob Joyce in church singing Elvis songs, there's a definite resemblance there in vocal style as well as the way he looks.
I'm going to have a look at that. I've never looked at it. but in the 80s, everyone were doing Elvis impressions in pubs. I might just one of them watched all that.
Yeah, listen to this one. My wife's cousin, he's an Elvis impersonator. He walks around looking like Elvis in Blackpool and all over singing. And he sounds fantastic as well when he's doing it. He's done it all his life. He earns his living from being an Elvis impersonator.
Is it the fat Elvis or the young, slim Elvis?
He's the 70s Elvis. He ain't quite fat, this guy.
Jumpsuit Elvis.
Jumpsuit Elvis, yeah.
Have you noticed how every Elvis impersonator only impersonates him in his fat 70s latter years?
Yeah. Not the cooler one where he does that comeback tour in his leather outfit. I mean, that's a good bit. I quite liked Elvis myself, to be fair.
I could see you dressed in that gear in your shed, Chris, making gaping gobs.
Weirdly, we were kind of weirdly brought up with Elvis because his dad were a massive Elvis fan. He had all the records. You know, when you play your dad's records,
yeah,
our records were 90% Elvis, so you had no choice but to like Elvis.
Elvis and Shirley Bassey. Obviously, he saw himself as Shirley, and my mum was Shirley Bassey.
Yeah, Elvis, you mean?
Oh, yeah, but all the way around. Yeah.
That's you in a wig, Dom.
Shirley Bassey. Quite possibly. Yeah, Dame Shirley Bassey, Dom in a wig.
Dom.
It's not creepy.
One of the stories were that Dionne Warwick were playing in Huddersfield at the town hall, and when my mum came out, everyone wanted her autograph because they thought she was Dionne Warwick. This was in the 60s, early 60s.
Our dad clearly had a thing for black women because he married me. He was pretty right wing in his views.
He wasn't exactly a BMW. What would a bloke be? BMW, black man's woman. Yeah. Anyway, wouldn't be. I don't know what make a car that'd be.
But the only women I ever saw him discuss was black women. Shirley Bassey, Dionne Warwick. Whenever they came on TV, like, oh God, she's beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, he must have had it pretty bad to marry a black woman in 1960s in Yorkshire.
Yeah. Never mentioned about Sam Fox or like that, did he?
No, nobody. Just
black women.
Yeah.
I went through a phase myself in the late 90s where I only fancied black girls and just looked at black girls. And now I'm exposing most of them in my book. Black artists, black music artists. Now I'm writing about them. And
Who'd have thought, going back, whatever, 20 odd years, that you're interviewing Beyonce and then you're doing a genealogy in your book?
I know,
That's
right?
bizarre.
Never saw it coming.
No, there's a lot of.
I mean, this was never any kind of career plan. I never said to myself, do you know what? I'm going to jack in the DJing and traveling around doing parties and having fun, and instead have no life and lock myself away in a darkened room for hours and just write books exposing all these people that I previously used to enjoy. Probably the same for you.
It's not career enhancing, Mark.
Well, it's an odd thing because it's a double-edged sword, because it has become quite a successful career for me. Like I say, I never planned for it, but I'm doing okay. You know, people seem to enjoy my books, and I'm getting booked to do talks and presentations and stuff. And I'm actually busier and doing better than I ever was as a DJ. It's just there was more fulfillment being a DJ because it's fun, and there's not much fun in this, but it is still a living in an
Yeah,
old
and it is
home.
quite fulfilling as well in a strange sort of way. When
Especially when you get that Masonic briefcase delivered to your house every week.
there is that one, yeah, yeah.
All three
It's
of
when you
us.
get
Yeah.
it's when you get to our stage in life, and that you start looking at this stuff. You don't see many guys or women in their 20s doing this kind of research. You get to your sort of middle age and you get jaded and cynical and grizzled, and that's when you start looking into all this stuff. That's why all the researchers are our kind of age into all this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah. You won't see a teenager or somebody in the 20s slagging Taylor Swift off, or yeah,
Not very often.
no.
Can we get rid of Kenneth Copeland off the screen? He's freaking
Yeah,
me
and he's
out.
freaking me out. So I'm going to say that.
I thought I keep terrifying you with him. I like his eyes. He's got
His
something in his
demonic
eyes.
I swear to God, his eyes, right? Although they're in that picture you just had up there, they were blue. They turn yellow and they start moving. I swear to God, I don't know if it's just me, but he literally looks possessed to me.
Yeah.
What about Miles Copeland's eyes? You showed a clip of him at one of your presentations, and he's got the deadest eyes you've ever seen, soulless.
Yes. I mean, that guy was the station head of station in the Middle East. So this stuff that's going on in the Middle East now, as horrifying as it is, has been going on for hundreds of years, with these people in crusades and things like. Remember when George Bush said this is going to be the Great Crusade, and he had to scrub that and come back out and say it's going to be something for freedom or something like that, because they didn't want to say it were a crusade because they'd have all the Arab countries up against America and Britain, the supposed allies. So this has been going on for years. All these people, when you go back into I think it would one of Morrison's relations, who carried the heart of somebody to the Jerusalem or something like that, or carrying.
I remember that stuff.
These are then 500-600 years later, they're in some sort of hippie band telling, changing culture. How the fuck does that work? That it can't just happen by. It's written somewhere, like we're saying about in the code.
It's coding, isn't it? Back to the coding.
It has to be, because these things have happened. It's just technology that's changed, not the individual families. The same people are involved in all this stuff, like the Bush family. And
we've said between us that it can't all be the product of human planning. It can't be a bunch of people sat around a table saying, and then we'll do this, and then we'll do that. We'll put this guy in here. It's like this realm, however it's constructed, just sees to it that it plays out that way. It's in the coding.
The zeros and ones. That just constantly. It's like, going back to the Beatles, how unimportant they are. It seems to be. Like Mike Williams and Matt Sergio and people who have been researching the Beatles, they are the centre of a lot of things, whether we like it. I like to. I wasn't into Beatles music, or I'm not that interested in the Beatles, to be quite blunt. But they actually, that band are the centre of a lot of things. It is a strange phenomenon, isn't it?
They can tie you up for weeks at a time, as Matt and Mike will tell you.
Yeah.
And I can't see that happening with any of today's acts. Can you imagine somebody researching Ed Sheeran in 30 years' time and just churning out an entire book on Ed Sheeran's influence on culture? Can't see it myself.
No. Or ginger haircuts. Yeah.
can't name
Who
an
am I
Ed
to
Sheeran
talk
song.
about? Who am I to talk about haircuts?
I was jealous I don't have anyone's follicles.
Yeah, follicle challenged. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know his songs either. They're just wish-wash, throwaway Bic Razor songs, aren't they?
Exactly.
That's what they are.
Sam Smith, same way. At least Sam Smith is interesting to talk about because he's so fucked up. There's more to say about him.
I've not seen anything about that guy for a long time, since his devil costume antics. Oh, I tell you what, though, I saw
in a black rubber suit. And,
I saw a I think it was a photo or a painting of him in National Portrait Gallery in London. I like to go in there when I go to London, and there was a big picture of him there. Quite a lot of trans stuff as well, actually, in art galleries now. Another way to push the agendas forward.
Yeah, well, the Lewis Collins story is a fascinating one. That's part of the Beatles. Going back to that they're picking people to mold them into doing something. That is an interest. If there's ever a secret,
I don't know this story, by the way.
What, there's Lewis Collins stuff?
No,
you've heard talking about him, surely.
Have I?
I think so. Yeah. Anyway, go on, Mark. Yeah.
Lewis Collins was originally tapped to be in the Beatles.
All right, I didn't know.
He was going to be a drummer. So I think it's around the time that they replaced Pete Best with Ringo Starr. Lewis Collins was in the running to possibly be recruited for the Beatles. He was in a Merseybeat band. I think he grew up on the Wirral, if I recall, and he was part of the sort of Merseybeat sound of Liverpool and surrounds. And then he moved into acting, and he became Bodie in The Professionals, and he starred in Who Dares Wins as an SAS guy. And it turns out that he was actually an SAS paratrooper with a military background. And he also was in the running to replace Roger Moore as James Bond, but the producers rejected him on the grounds that he seemed too aggressive.
What, to be James Bond who just goes around shooting people left,
It was
right, centre?
Yeah, it was a
Exactly.
black belt in martial arts as well, so it weren't just some.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He did give off that aura, didn't it, of an actual tough nut. I
Yeah.
always thought.
yeah,
Well, apparently he was.
yeah.
And you got the Collins name there. Collins is an interesting bloodline family. It's one of these sort of Illuminati names. There was John Todd Collins, known as Lance Collins, who was this guy who became a whistleblower in the 1970s. He'd worked in the music industry. He came out of one of these aristocratic families, and they put him to work in the music industry in America. And for whatever reason, he walked away from all of that, became a born again Christian, and started speaking out about what he'd been involved with in the music industry. And there's all kinds of stories about what happened to him. Nobody seems to know. Some people claim he was got rid of. They took him out in various ways. He certainly fizzled out after a few years, so seemed to have disappeared one way or another. But, you got the family name Collins there. And Lewis Collins makes me think of Phil Collins. Could Phil be connected to that bunch? There's some more homework for you, Dom.
Yeah. I can need some more. Yeah.
Oh God, you just reminded me of that video you showed us, Mark, of Phil Collins.
Oh
God,
That's not a nice video, that is it?
no.
What is it he says? What does he say?
Well, it's for Frank Bruno's appearance on This Is Your Life.
That's right.
And as we now know, Frank Bruno was a close personal friend of Jimmy Savile. Jimmy Savile introduced Frank Bruno to Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper, so nice people. And at Jimmy Savile's funeral, Frank Bruno's there with Mike Reed, the BBC breakfast show DJ, and they're lauding Savile as this great guy, and Mike Reed saying, oh, he was the governor, he was a special man. And Frank Bruno says, Jimmy Savile helped me in all kinds of ways that I can't really talk about on the television. And then on this episode of This Is Your Life, which is from the early 90s, they wheel out Phil Collins. And he's talking about Frank Bruno's work for charity with the Prince's Trust. That's Lord Sausage Fingers, back in the day. And Phil Collins says, all the children whose lives you've touched. And then he just gives this look. He raises his eyebrow and he's got this glint in his eye, which to me is just pure demonic.
Yeah.
And it's what he says.
Yeah.
The
You can't hide
children
that
whose
look.
whose lives you've touched. I think that was a coded message.
Yeah. It definitely appeared to be a coded message.
I mean, Bruno went bonkers, didn't he? He lost the plot in the 2000s? He was put in an institution, wasn't he? He was sectioned. He looked terrified of
MK Ultra.
Yeah, for a big guy like Frank Bruno, who's obviously hard as shit. He looked terrified of Jimmy Savile.
Yeah, he always had this childlike demeanor about him, Bruno, didn't he? Just acted like a child, like this grown-up big baby. And I'm sure it's the result of MK Ultra. Probably his brain was destroyed, and he's in with Savile and that whole lot, and whatever they get up to.
I'm sure I saw him say that Savile stitched him up with that Peter Sutcliffe bit where he saw him, that he basically just took him there, and he just came out of nowhere and got him shit. And before he realised what happened, they got a photograph. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
That was
but how weird that Savile was actually questioned by police over one of the murders in Leeds, because I think one of the women was found not far from Savile's house, if I remember rightly. And yet he's going to visit bloody Peter Sutcliffe in Broadmoor or wherever he was.
But it's okay because Sir Queer Stalin had his back at the CPS.
Yeah.
And it was always written that he wouldn't go down for anything for as long as Starmer was in charge of all that.
I think William Hague were in charge of the Welsh part of that as well. He's now a baron as well, William Hague.
Funny when you've that what's the murder book, the Dave McGowan one, and I remember reading that.
Program to Kill.
Program to Kill, great book, horrible but really good. But I remember reading that and thinking it can't be the same with English, and it didn't take you long to like Dom said, realize that one of the dead bodies were found outside Savile's out, and then I think the Hindleys, I think he played, didn't he, DJ over in Manchester where they went and fired, where and you just think, so the whole serial killer story was just the shenanigans to terrify everyone.
Well, for him to be, now we've got some background on this guy, for him to be actually linked with two of the most prolific mass murderers in British history, modern times, I mean, that alone should ring some alarm bells somewhere, surely.
But if you think, Dom, I remember Yorkshire Ripper being on the rampage in Yorkshire, and I worked in Leeds years later. And there's a guy a little bit older than me. He said they actually locked Leeds down. Headingley were locked down. You were curfewed. You weren't allowed out.
Yeah.
Because the guy's going around. Yeah. More.
What was that? I think we spoke about it last time.
Book,
go on, Mark.
Yeah, in that book, McGowan is saying that all these serial killers were actually programmed by the CIA to go out and do all this stuff. They were mind controlled. And so it's probably the same thing in the UK, as you say, Chris. And do you remember that show that we did in the summer of 23 with Matt Sergiu on the second summer of Love? We were talking about the smiley face killings, the dark side of the smiley icon. And there's this trend of these young men that have been going missing, started out in America. They're out drinking at some sort of social event or party or whatever, and then they go missing and their bodies are discovered some days later near water, lake or a river, whatever. So it started out in America, but then exactly the same thing was getting done in Britain. And young men in Britain were turning up dead in the same way. And there was always a smiley face daubed in graffiti close by. So what does that tell you? Either it's some copycat that's been inspired by what's going on in America, or it's a coordinated agenda in Britain and America.
And there's those two ladies that have been found over the last couple of years. The searches were going on and on and on, and they found them exactly where they were searching, in the water. Nicola, I forget what she was called now.
Bully.
Yeah, Bully, yeah. It's a strange phenomenon.
Dr. Richard Asher went missing and the family are like, where is he? Search the house from top to bottom. Is he upstairs? No. Is he in the basement? No. Then a week later, he turns up dead in the basement and we're told he killed himself. Yeah. So where did he go for that week then?
Yeah. We've taken Richard Asher's bloodline back to Frankfurt, Germany. Yeah.
As in the Frankfurt School.
Well, whether he were in the but he's got famous family links in music. Going back down that angle, which is interesting. Also, Jane Asher played Alice in Wonderland, written by Lewis Carroll, and they share the same bloodline with George Orwell to King Edward III. I mean, what would the odds of her playing Asher to a person who was actually related to her be?
Yeah. Well, they do this sometimes. You know, Benedict Cumberbatch portrayed Alan Turing, the mathematician, in the Enigma Code. And it turns out that Cumberbatch is a cousin of Alan Turing.
Just look. Just look. Just like Tom Wanks, who we were just talking about, is related to Disney, played Disney in that film, and Mr. Banks is a cousin of him. No doubt we'll find out. Also, a lot of his people who he's been in films with is actually cousins of.
What's interesting about
that
he's related to the Turing guy is they don't use it in any of the advertising or propaganda to promote the film.
Wouldn't that be a massive? No, Chris, do they?
That's what I mean. Wouldn't it be a massive point that Cumberbatch was related to him and use it to promote the film? Because that'd be a positive, wouldn't it? Surely.
Well, Tim Berners-Lee's
effort now. That seems to be a coordinated effort now to downplay information of the type that guys like us present. So, in the book, I've got this story of how Janet Jackson went on Zoe Ball's BBC Radio 2 breakfast show. And just out of nowhere, she brought up, oh, I'm cousins with Samuel L. Jackson, Stevie Wonder with the electrode plugged in, and Tracy Chapman. And it's like, it's nothing really. Yeah, I'm cousins with these guys, and so what? You know, there's nothing to it really. And I think they're just trying to devalue information of this nature purely because the likes of us are putting so much of it out now.
Yeah, just to
They
ridicule
don't want
the
they,
bloodline.
they don't want people joining the dots and going, hang on a minute. The reason all these people are famous is because they're cousins with this person or they come from this family or whatever.
But the worrying thing is for people like an NPC is they it's that big that for instance it always takes you back to who's choosing this lineage to be famous or successful, if you like. There has to be a component in the system, whether it's a biological AI that just magnetically chooses this stuff, or it's actually a group of people, or both, that are actually choosing. That is too big for a NPC to envisage in the mind. For us, it's easy to accept that somewhere a Damien-like individual is cherry picked out and pushed forward.
Yeah, it's too much for people.
Just going back to the serial killer part, on a happy note, obviously. The Dunblane is another one of those that has a lot of strange aspects. The lady wrote a fantastic book. It isn't a fantastic book, but it's called Dunblane. And she was, I think she was a nurse. Yeah, you told me about it, I think.
Yeah.
But those, the actual evidence has been locked up, I think, for 75 years.
Well, we've heard that before.
Why would they want to lock evidence up, right? Of a load of children that were killed that said that it's part of the Official Secrets Act. Why? What on earth would that cover up? Well, we know what it covers up.
Well, the guy who did it was a Jimmy Savile-esque character, wasn't he?
Yeah, he ran bloody weird
trips away for kids on boats and stuff. Then he
Yeah.
had a boat. I think his boat got burnt as well, didn't it? Didn't he get set on fire?
Yeah, strangely.
Was Andy Murray one of the kids involved?
Yes, and I was going to say, and Andy Murray and his mother, who looks like that Kenneth Copeland. Her eyes do anyway. But yeah, Andy Murray came out of that school.
There's also a photo going round of what purports to be a young Keir Starmer when he was a kid with Jimmy Savile.
Right.
I've heard people say it's a fake, but allegedly it's Keir Starmer as a kid meeting Jimmy Savile.
Well, I mean, we have got video evidence of Keir Starmer appearing on Robert Kilroy Silk's show
with Judge Jules.
With Judge Jules. Not a bad segue into Judge Jules, actually. Because he's one of the DJs who you spoke about a lot in the book.
Yeah, we don't just throw these shows together, you know.
Yeah. Just to stick to the serial killer thing, do you remember the Hungerford massacre? So the Dunblane one was to get rid of handguns in England. The Dunblane one was to get rid of shotguns, wasn't it? But I always remember.
You mean the Hungerford one?
Hungerford. What did I say?
You said both were Dunblane.
All right, sorry. Hungerford one.
I think it were automatic rifles.
And shotguns, whatever. But that literally ended the guns in England, didn't it? But even at the time, I remember reading that, and he said he was walking down the street with this like vacant, blank look on his face.
Yeah, I remember that.
And he wasn't reacting to anyone because he's in a village where people know him, and he was just shooting them left, right, and centre. And he had no reaction on his face.
His Action Man gear on.
Yeah. But I mean, that was just news, wasn't it? And then it was,
It's MK again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just like the Cumbria thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
but
let's talk about Judge Jules.
Yeah, Judge Jules, yeah. I mean, that story came together over I know you said he wrote it in 2 months, but the research that you put in behind the scenes, what people don't see, the information that comes together from different directions to you.
Well, I got most of it from you.
Well, no, not all of it. I think you sort of told me a bit of it about the thalidomide stuff as well.
Yeah.
And
the Rick
his
Stein
background.
link is the obvious one because Jules has spoken about this himself in so many interviews. He just drops this little nugget in, I'm the nephew of Rick Stein. So that sets you off. But what I found most interesting is there's virtually nothing to be found about who Judge Jules's mother was, i.e. Rick Stein's sister. And we looked into some official biographies of Rick Stein, and it mentions he's got one brother who's a lecturer at Oxford University, and he talks about Neuralink, sort of brain implants and transhumanism.
Yeah.
And he's into vivisection.
Yeah.
And then Stein's got another sister known as Zoe or Henrietta, but they never mention his other sister, who's Jules's mother. She's scrubbed from the historical record, which is very strange. There's lots of stuff on his father. His father, Sean O'Connell O'Riordan. Do you think he was Irish?
Possibly.
He was actually born in Sri Lanka. They were a family of tea planters. And O'Riordan Sr. became a TV producer. And he was the guy behind Sapphire and Steel, which is a show I used to love in the late 70s. Joanna Lumley, back to her, David McCullum. So Sean worked on that. But there seems to have been an effort to cover up who his mother was. But he's always talking about his links to Rick Stein. And then
Yeah.
you alerted me to the fact that Rick Stein's father, who jumped off a cliff to his death in Cornwall in 1965, the year Jules was born, was involved in the marketing of thalidomide, which is this chemical that was given to pregnant women in the late 50s going into the 60s. And it was linked with hideous birth defects in the children. And it got absolutely savaged in the media, demonized. And, you know, this is the guy that was marketing that stuff. So you couldn't make it up.
No, no. And he's got an interesting bloodline as well, going all the way back into France. I think, if my memory serves me right.
That's right. French
yeah.
aristocracy.
Yeah. So, his story reminded me of when Lorraine helped me on that one. When me and Lorraine did that, of the Dom Jolly research we did. Similar sort of family sort of background. Obviously, he was in Sri Lanka. Don Jolly's family were in Lebanon. But similar sort of working for governments and here and there. And, you know, do you think there's some kind of promissory note, maybe physical or non-physical, if you like, that's written to these families that says, you know, you've got the Johnson family remind me of that as well. They've got some sort of route to success, regardless of what happens now. You've made this, you've done this work for me. We're going to promise that your kids are going to have a successful life.
I think there probably is. There are certain families that just seem to be selected,
Cherry picked.
to be inserted into culture. And like I said earlier, I think early on, possibly it's not known in which way they're going to become influential, and it's decided later on. So somebody like, I'm not saying this was the case with Jules, but we could throw Fatboy Slim back in there as well. Perhaps these people show a propensity towards music and clubbing and DJing, and they like raves and stuff. And then possibly a handler might say, oh, well, okay, then there's a role for this individual to be inserted into the rave electronic dance music scene, for instance, and become a leader, a Pied Piper of that. So maybe they wait a bit to see if there's any natural talent that comes through, and then that gets harnessed.
Yeah. Well, one of the individuals, Mark Ronson, he was an interesting individual to look into the background, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
But
I used to see his name popping up on the sort of society celebrity DJ circuit, you know, in New York and also in London. And I was a DJ myself at the time, and I was like, who's this guy? Why is he getting all these bookings? Fucking Mark Ronson. Who is he? He's doing celebrity parties for Jay-Z and fucking Lauryn Hill or whoever. And of course, now at this stage in the research, I realized that he was selected for it. But at the time, and my DJ mates were all like, who is he? Who is this guy popping up out of nowhere? We've been putting this hard work in for years. And now, of course, I know how it works.
I would even say, as an observer, he was clearly, he just came out of nowhere and just started being on everything, didn't it? And in everything, mixing everything for everyone's albums and stuff.
I mean, as we know, Mark Ronson's family is a well-connected family, Chris.
Right.
Yeah, I think his uncle was locked up, but then he's still got I think he's a sir or something, or a baron, and his auntie's a dame or something like that.
The real family name was Aronson.
Yeah, that's right.
So they just shortened it to Ronson.
Yeah. So it happens a lot, does that? The changing of the names, and what have you. Yeah.
I was watching a film last night by Mike Lee. Chris, I'm sure you know his films.
Yeah.
And I looked him up, and the real family name was, I think, Lieberman. So they changed it from Lieberman to Lee.
Right.
And then when you've got Linda McCartney's father, his name was Lee Eastman, but originally it was Epstein, Leopold Vale Epstein. So often they change their names to sound less Jewish and more American or British.
And they use the reason, or excuse, whichever you want to, as being an anti-Semitic society, if you like. But it seems to be that a lot of these people, regardless of what religion you want to say, they're very successful. So being Jewish doesn't stop you being successful. So there's no real reason to change your name.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually a benefit in the entertainment game because Jewish people control most of those institutions.
Yeah, in the entertainment game.
Look at Mike Lee, Matt. He's literally the director that's pushed social commentary since the 70s, hasn't he? Mike Leigh. And he's always saying he's retiring and brings another film out. He's one of those guys, isn't he?
Yeah, he's bloody 80 odd now and he's still making films.
Still churning films out, yeah.
Yeah.
Good director, though. His
Hard
films are
Truths.
good.
I saw. You seen that one?
Which one?
Hard Truths.
What happens in it? I might have seen it.
It's a black family, sort of extended black family. It's got Marianne Jean Baptiste in it.
Oh, no, it's a newish one, that. No, I haven't seen that one. I'd like to watch it. I do like his films, to be fair.
Yeah, they are good films.
I was doing some for my book. I was doing some research on. I'm at the point where I'm doing Boris Johnson's exes, his ex-wives, ex-girlfriends, that type of stuff. People he's had affairs with, and his first wife, Allegra Mostyn Owen, from landed gentry. They own a place down south and they used to own a castle up north. But anyway, you'd expect her ancestry to be quite interesting. But one of the lines of ancestry takes you back to all these rabbis in the mid, 14th century in Germany, and you do find stuff that you're not sort of expecting. But Boris was part Jewish. Is part of his ancestry is that, and it makes you wonder whether these people were just put together because they got married at Oxford, and you see that happening a lot, like with say Jay-Z and Kim Kardashian type. Is it Jay-Z? Kane, what's he called? I keep calling him Kane West.
Kanye West. Yeah.
Kanye West and Kim Kardashian, who's a cousin of David Cameron. Just happens to be a cousin.
Well, if you think going back in history, that if the same bloodlines have run us lot since day one, and then you think of the old stories and films with the intermarriaging of families, it's just that, isn't it? Just on a modern version, it would seem. I think
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. Yeah.
I'm just wondering how Boris Johnson became such a shagger. I mean, look at him.
He's
Probably
like Lothario.
That was probably his reward, Mark, for doing as he's told, whether he knew it or not.
Yeah, but it's interesting to see the people that he was married into.
What's oh, go on, sorry for that.
No, I mean his second wife, Maria Wheeler, who works for Stalin now. Her father was part of the intelligence agency. He was in a secret commando outfit with Fleming, the James Bond guy. If you wanted to write this shit, if we wanted to write a book and say, everyone go, oh, it's a bit far out, that, isn't it, guys?
Truth
What's
is stranger than fiction.
What's one of your favourite or surprising or weirdest things in the new book, Matt, just out of interest?
Well, the Judge Jules stuff was very interesting to me. But also, I've got this story that was carried in People magazine in 2021 of this French count, not a spelling mistake, an aristocrat named Jean de Breteuil.
Yeah.
And he was born into a life of great privilege and great wealth and, never had to work for a living. But for some reason, he decided to become a heroin dealer to rock stars. And he sold gear reportedly to Janis Joplin. He sold gear to Jim Morrison and Pamela Courson. Also Marianne Faithfull. He was in a relationship with Marianne Faithfull and he sold her smack as well. He's getting all these rock stars just
Keith Richards
up to their eyeballs on
yeah.
smack.
Yeah.
So it seems to be an allotted role. He didn't have to do this. He could have just hung out in castles and mansions for the rest of his life, but he just popped up and sold drugs to all these people. Allegedly, according to this story, he sold the batch of heroin which killed Jim Morrison. I've got my doubts about Morrison actually dying when we're told he did in 1971, down to who his old man was. He was the perfect candidate for being allowed to disappear. But this French Count guy's story is very interesting. There seems to be only one photograph of him on the entire internet. He himself died at the age of 22 after sampling his own wares. And most people have never heard of him. I'd never heard of him before this.
Yeah.
And yet he was hanging out with Jim Morrison and Janis Joplin and Mick Jagger. He infiltrated the Rolling Stones. So this seems to be another role that they have lined up for some of these people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what their interest would be in getting all these rock stars strung out on heroin, but there seems to be an agenda there.
His genealogy goes back to the time where they were lobbing people's heads off. His father, his great granddad was given some kind of barony, I suppose, in France or whatever, Count Hood or whatever they call him, due to helping the king at that point. So yeah, fuck knows what it all means. But just like Jane Asher's great 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 granddad being king of really Kintyre. And what's that mean?
Now you know why McCartney did that song.
I love Kintyre.
Another oddball. That area there um, is around the island of the Kings of Sodor, and Sodor's a mythical island in Thomas the Tank Engine that Ringo Starr did the voiceover for. But yeah, yes. Just when you find stuff, and you'll know this, Mark, you, Chris, as well. When you find stuff like that, it just the hair stand up on the back of your arms, and you think that can't be real. That surely can't be real. I'm sure Dave McGowan, God rest his soul, thought the same when he uncovered all them military connections when he wrote his book. Wouldn't you love to be
I
there?
don't think I don't think Dave fully appreciated what he'd uncovered.
No.
I think he must at the time have thought, oh, this is interesting. This is quite tantalizing. Oh, wow, look at all these patterns and trends that are starting to emerge. But I don't think he fully placed it within the context of what goes on in society generally and how bloodlines work and how social engineering and lifetime actors and culture creation work. I mean, he brought a very valuable piece to the puzzle, but I just don't think he appreciated
Well,
how
I think
important that information was.
I remember that book coming out, Mark. I remember the interviews when he was doing the circus. I remember listening to them all, and he didn't. He was quite a humble guy, wasn't he? He didn't. I mean, if you think where is it? Like you say, his research inspired you and Dom, I reckon. Look what he opened up. He just cracked an egg open, didn't it? And he at the time he was a very humble. I think he was an engineer, wasn't he? And he was just talking about
was a
these
builder.
books. Builder, yeah, construction
plumber.
engineer. No,
But he was dead the following year. That book came out in 2014, and he was dead by the end of 2015 of turbo cancer.
yeah. I
So,
think I read
you know.
I don't know if I read the serial killer one first or not. I think I heard him doing the rounds with that one first, and then the Royal Canyon one came out after, didn't it? But yeah, I was listening to
So it
him.
makes you wonder, did he uncover such important nuggets of information that certain parties thought, oh, we don't want this stuff going too far, we got to nip this one in the bud. But look how far it has gone, because he's inspired researchers like us and Matt Sergiu and so many others.
Yeah.
And we've taken that baton and run with it, and we've magnified it 1,000-fold in terms of what we're now putting out. So didn't quite work, did it?
Didn't that book come from a series of blogs that he were writing? That somebody said to him, you should put that in a book.
That's right. It was a bunch of online articles, and he collated it all together into a book.
We can't not go any further and not talk about Mr. Diddy.
I think who is it? Justin Bieber's gone nuts, hasn't he? Of recent weeks, I think. I saw images of him like just incoherent, dancing around, looking insane. Poor. I feel sorry for Justin Bieber.
Yeah, I do.
I mean, that video, we can't play it, but that video of him showing him that car and stuff like that, that is fucking weird. I don't know if you've seen that, Mark, there's a video of him showing him I think it's a Lamborghini at his mansion, and he's only 15 there, is Justin Bieber, that picture there with his hat. No, he's got both hat on backwards, but the one on the right-hand side, anyway, if you're looking at it.
Is that where he says we're going to go wild for the weekend? Is every 15-year-old's fantasy, that sort of thing?
Yeah. I mean, fucking hell. That to
He's
me
just
is as
a
weird.
demon. He's a demon, man.
Yeah. That to me is as weird as the Phil Collins thing.
And what about, have you seen the video of Diddy with his mother? And his mother is all dressed up like a prostitute, and he looks like her pimp. And they've got an intravenous drip going into each of them. They're sharing an intravenous drip. And Diddy's saying, yeah, things got a little wild at the weekend. You know what I'm saying? Party got a little crazy. So we're just like recouping now. So they're replacing lost fluids and minerals
Souls.
or whatever with a bloody drip.
Yeah.
Yeah, salts. So his trial begins next month. And
do you think anything's
we'll
going to come
see
of
where
this,
that goes.
Mark? Because, or he's going to get Epsteined?
I think they're going to throw a few low-level names under the bus just to create the impression that something is being done. So it won't be any of the big names that we're all hoping will get dragged through the mud. They'll just make an example of a couple of low-level ones, and they'll say, see, this is what this guy was into, but we've got them all now, and it's all going to stop.
Because he was, would it David Geff? Is it David Geffen? Or am I getting the name wrong? Who was the guy who was big record producer who was
Record label guy? Yeah.
Yeah. And he was part of this set. I bet he don't get done if he's still around.
That's what I mean. You know, names like those will probably nothing will happen to him. Like the Epstein Express stuff, you know, Lolita Express, Epstein Island. No really big names. I mean, reportedly, Bill Gates was on those flights, Stephen Hawking, even, and Donald Trump, and nothing's happened to these people.
What's happened? Yeah, apparently they want the file on his desk ready to go.
No, Chris, no. It's coming out with the files.
If it's got files at the end, it's bollocks.
Yeah, JFK's gonna, not JFK, RFK's gonna release it all. Yeah,
the JFK assassination filmed from an angle you've never seen before.
Yeah, Trump's going to sort it all out. He's doing it now. Look at it. Look at what's happening. He's going to bring peace instantly to Middle East and Russia and everywhere else. It hasn't happened yet,
guys. So I'll have to run in a minute. So
yeah. That's all right. Yeah, we'll wrap up. We'll wrap up now. We've done nearly 2 hours, so just a gentle chat, walk in the park.
Well, it's a good warm up.
Yeah, good intro.
That's the intro sorted.
Yeah, that's the intro sorted. Well, yeah, where can people buy a book, Mark? Let's stop on that one.
Well, it's on Amazon. You kind of have to be. So if anyone wants to get it via that route, I do actually tell people in America and Canada and you know, other far-flung regions, Australia, New Zealand, that you should probably get it from Amazon, because I've had such bad experiences mailing copies out from here. They just never make it. They get seized by customs.
Well, what do you expect? It's 2024. I mean, got to wait another 200 years for mail to arrive in different countries.
2025, fair.
Yeah. Is it 2025? Sorry.
I heard it was 25.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for yeah.
Yeah, it's only nearly May.
Yeah.
So, you can get it on Amazon, but if you're in the UK or Europe, then I can mail out copies, no problem, signed copies. So just drop me an email, Devlin 2022 at protonmail.com. See, it's still 2022 for me. Other than that, I'm doing a whole bunch of talks. I'm always on tour, as you know. So we should talk about the bloody sheep farm events.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I talk about, and everyone emails saying they want tickets and they're all sold out. So, but the sheep farm events are sold out at Pennine Manor in Huddersfield. I think that this group of hotels, they own one in the northeast as well, so I'm going to look at that one. They also own one in Halifax, actually, that holds another 30 people. So I'm going to go down and have a glance at that. So I'm not getting pestered for more tickets next time we do one. Chris might have found a place in Cambridge. Hopefully,
they haven't got back to me though.
Right, okay. You probably need to turn up on their doorstep, Chris.
Yeah, maybe do.
You know, put a little bit of effort.
I think we should do one in Oxford as well.
Yeah,
bring it to Illuminati Central. Why not?
Do you know any down there, Mark?
Do you know any?
Yeah, there's a couple of hotels. I saw David Icke speak at a hotel down here. I saw Ian Crane, the late Ian Crane, speak at one. So
send us the names. Send us the names.
Yeah, there's some possible venues.
Yeah. If you send it, email me the names up, and we'll contact them.
Yeah, we'll do. Yeah.
And we'll arrange some, because I think, and I'm not saying I want to go the length and breadth of Britain, but I think having a few places up and down where we can do regular talks. I mean, doing three or four, you do every bloody week, but doing 3 or 4 a year will be great.
Some north and south, yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Well, what I've noticed is I'm getting booked to speak up north a lot, so I'm always going up to Newcastle, Middlesbrough, Yorkshire, but I was never really getting booked to speak down south. So I've started putting on events of my own. I've got some events coming up in.
Must be that northern accent.
Exactly. You can always tell with the word bastard. I said this in my comedy set at Rise Above. You know, if it's bastard, you're from down south. If it's bastard, somewhere north of Birmingham.
Bastard.
Yeah.
Where are you putting on your own events then, Matt?
So it's High Wycombe, Oxford, Reading, Swindon, and Northampton. Basically, these are all close to home, so I can do it there and back in an evening without having to stay over, like as has seemed to be the case with all my gigs so far.
Yeah. Where can people see them ones then? The
tickets and that.
Well, just go to my website, djmarkdevlin.com/events, and they're all listed there.
Right. I'll have to try and come to one because I'm down south, obviously.
But the plan is definitely for me. I mean, we spoke about it, Chris, to do some more live events. But I like organising them myself. I don't like. I know it sounds a bit I like doing them myself and organising it myself.
He's a control freak, Matt.
Yeah.
This comes down to having no life.
Yeah. I need to get out of this bunker, then I'll know what fucking year it is.
Unchain the gimp.
Yeah, unchain the gimp. Bring the gimp out. Yeah, Marcellus Wallace in corner. All right, then we'll leave it there. I'm going to go and get some daylight. I look like one of them moles. We're a mole on Danger Mouse, wasn't they? What are we called? A-up. Yeah, that might be me. Yeah. All right, then. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. If you join us in part 2, we'll see you there. If not, we'll see you next week. Bye.
But
Bah.
I'll be a part of the oceans and sky. When I was young, before my life, I was a part of the oceans and